And we're recording. Hello, my name is Bryce Tubbs. With me today is Liz Keable. She is the success coach who is inspiring success and supporting change. She helps students who achieve higher grades by believing that they can. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Liz.
You're welcome.
Excellent. You know, everybody has a story. What was life like before you got into success coaching, and really what was the cause of events that led you here?
Well, we have to go back quite a long way. I have to go back to the time when I was at school, because I found that although I loved learning, I seemed to find it really difficult to remember things. So passing tests, passing exams and so on were a real trial for me. And so I ended up leaving school without any real qualifications. And of course, if you can't get the qualifications, then you can't get the type of job that you're after. So I ended up with very menial jobs like working in shops and doing admin work. And it meant that I was kind of not feeling very successful at all, and got married, had children, and was living on the breadline basically. So that's where it all started. Change came for me at the point where I received a cleaning job, but it was in a professional setting. So it was for the first time that I'd actually worked with professionals, although I was cleaning their desks, cleaning their floors, cleaning their toilets and so on. But they said to me, why are you here? Why are you doing this menial job when you are obviously so much smarter than that? And that was the first time that I began to believe that maybe I was smarter than I thought I was. And there was one person in particular, a colleague, who challenged me over it and said, well, look, you obviously are smart. Why don't you try and do something about it? Why don't you go to college and find out what you can actually do? So that's what I did. I started, but I was very scared because I had had this poor experience of learning before where I couldn't achieve. So I started simply with using how to use a computer, typing and things like that, but I also took some basic qualifications. And for the first time I found that I could learn, and I tried to work out what the difference was because I hadn't been able to learn at school, but now I was somehow managing to learn. And I realized for me that I just needed more time. The speed of stuff going on at school was just too much. I was a slow thinker and needed time to process things in order to grasp them fully. But obviously as an adult learner, I could do that. So I dared to try advanced learning, and came out top of my class doing an advanced course. And then I dared to apply for a degree course, which I felt at the time I had what they now call imposter syndrome, in the sense that I can't do this, I don't belong here, I'm not that kind of person. But I was accepted on the course, and I absolutely loved. It was 4 years because I had no previous qualifications that would feed into a degree level course. So it was 4 years long, and I loved absolutely every minute of it. And was really disappointed when it finished, because I was studying, I was learning, I was remembering things, I was passing exams, all because I could now study my way as an adult. And that was how I found that kind of sense of achievement, if you like.
Can you talk about becoming more aware of what will work for you? I don't think a lot of people know how to actually find what works for them.
Yeah. And I think that's what's important, is that people feel that they have to stick to the traditional way that they were taught in school. And that's actually something that I work with now, is the idea that children in school are taught, they're told to sit still and listen and take the information on board. And that's not really real learning. And I'll come to that more when I come to the idea about having been a success coach. Because where that actually led me was into teaching, because I had been successful with a degree, and I felt that if I got into teaching, I could give back, as it were, and try and teach in a way that I was now beginning to understand was more successful. So I became a high school science teacher, and I also took on a lot of extra training in what was then known as brain-friendly learning, which was kind of the more modern positive psychology stuff. And it meant that I was then able to apply that in my classroom and I was supposed to be cascading it to other staff as well at the same time. But I found there was a certain amount of resistance even among the staff, because it required change, and change in education is a very, very slow and painful thing. So I decided that although I really enjoyed teaching, I loved doing it, and I was having an impact on my classes with the way that I was teaching, when the opportunity came up to leave and work for an education, what was then known as an education action zone, is an education partnership, where I had a role that was involved going into schools and helping to train staff. So I felt I could have a more of an impact over a wider area by doing that. And they loved the training. They loved all the brain-friendly learning stuff. And then, but again, once they took that back in the classroom, it kind of slowly disappeared, because the system was not really allowing them to put it into practice. And I even did a project in a school where I was allowed to work with a particular year group for most of a year, in order to put some of these things into practice. And it made a massive difference to the results at the end of the year. In fact, the head teacher came to me and said their scores have gone through the roof. Wow. As a result of the work that I'd been doing. And yet I still felt like it was not being taken on board. It was not making enough of a difference in the classroom or in schools. So that was when I decided that I would try and do it a different way. I ended up working for a county team. That's 2 different counties in the UK were in a partnership together to try and support looked after children in foster care who had faced trauma as youngsters and were finding education difficult as a result of that. And my job was to get them an education one way or another. And in some instances it meant teaching them myself. In other instances it meant getting them a placement in school. But one of the things that I found was that all the methods that I had used before really worked with these youngsters as well, because it was very much about what I had learned about how to believe in myself. And I found that by working with them in the same way, they were starting to believe in themselves and the potential that they had, which was a really important way of moving forward. Whatever difficulties they had, that they could actually move forward. And my manager used to say, "Oh, Liz has worked her magic again," because these youngsters started thriving from an education point of view anyway. And but it wasn't magic. It was this kind of process that I had been through, if you like, of needing to find out how that particular person's mind works, building on what works, building on what strengths they already have, recognizing the difficulties, and then working with the difficulty and seeing how to overcome it. The biggest one is self-belief. Mm-hmm. And that was how I ended up becoming a success coach, was because that team that I was working for was ended. It was a project that came to an end. I was already too old and too expensive to go back into school. No school was going to hire me because of the level of expertise that I had at that point. So I decided that the best thing was to become an independent success coach, because that way I could still work in schools. I could still support education, but from the outside and independently. And I could then help individuals to kind of have the same realization that I did, that they can be learners, they can achieve it. They just need that help to change the psychology really around their learning.
Mm-hmm. You know, talking about belief. So you're saying that was one of the key things. What are some steps that people can do to start, reinforcing either a positive belief or start really increasing that self-confidence in themselves?
Yeah, I think that what I usually start with them is what strengths they already have. When I work with somebody, we always start with the idea of finding out how they learn best. Mm. the idea of the way that input comes in through listening, speaking, doing, hearing. So we work out what's the best way for them, the way that appeals to them the most for taking in information. We also look at their strengths when it comes to intelligence, as in Howard Gardner's intelligences. So we look at all the different ways of being intelligent, and what their top intelligences are, and then they create a shield. And from that shield tells them and their teachers, if they're still in school, what their best way of learning is and what their top ways of being intelligent, in other words, their top way of demonstrating their learning is. And then we look at that shield and we say, well, look, this is all the best things about you as a learner. They're all the things that you can be proud of. But what's not on the shield is going to be the things that you find difficult. So we then look at going from that base of strength, if you like, to the fact that, and then it gives you that kind of language of, yeah, of course you're going to find that difficult. It's not on your shield. So it becomes a natural conversation about what's difficult and why it might be difficult for them. And then we look at the idea of basically the difference between the conscious and the subconscious mind, the fact that the conscious mind is the one that's thinking, I can't do this, I don't know how to do it. The subconscious mind it's kind of underneath. I use that kind of symbol. You've got like a thinking mind and you've got a subconscious mind underneath it. And the subconscious is the one that holds all the beliefs about what we can and can't do. And therefore, we need to think about what might be in the subconscious mind that's stopping us from doing it. I teach them, one of the things I teach them is not to say the word can't. We get rid of the T, which means that they're not going to say I can't do this, and I teach them to say I can do this, I just need some help. So that if they just say I can and then it's difficult, then you've still got a problem that you don't believe yourself that you can do it. Whereas if you say I can do this, I just need some help, and then teach them how to get the help. So that they gradually get that idea of that they can do things with support. That's a couple of things that we start with. There's lots of things that I do with them to gradually build up that sense of self-belief.
Can I ask you this question? It's probably a weird question. Do you ever teach them how to become independent without the help?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually run courses for teaching assistants because their role often becomes one that pupils can become dependent upon because they're there all the time. So one of the courses that I run is for teaching assistants to teach them how to help the students become more independent. And a lot of it is around, once they have the self-belief that they can achieve, it's then much easier to encourage them to try things for themselves. One of the other things that comes up a lot is that often students don't realise how much practice is involved. If it's something like a sport of some kind, you have a coach and you do lots and lots of practice. But for some reason or other, when it comes to something academic, students seem to think that they need to know it straight away. They've been told once and therefore they should know it. Whereas if you can instill in them the idea that you have a go and you don't get it right, and then you have another go and you still find it difficult, so you have another go, that idea of resilience and practice at things is really important. And it's one of the things that I do a lot of work with them on, is that idea of being prepared to have a go, not being afraid of challenge, that the brain actually works that way. Our brain is designed to take on a challenge, play around with it, experiment with it, record the results, and then make a decision based on that about where we go next. And that's how the brain works. And yet the way that learning takes place, particularly in schools, doesn't go that way. So yeah. I think that's why so many learners find it difficult. That's one of the things that helps them become independent. I teach them a lot about their brain and how it works and how they're learning, what the glitches can be, how to overcome them, and so on, so that they can become more independent.
Just kind of switching gears, what is the vision for you and for, your life?
My passion, obviously, is supporting other learners, having been through the experience I did and where I managed to get, once I managed to sort that out. I love the idea of helping others to do that. On in the more immediate future, I'm currently working on a pilot course for students to help them overcome that idea of imposter syndrome, the fact they don't belong there and they're not good enough and so on. So it's for university students who are going to university for the first time, who also have a problem with independent study, because the universities are complaining about students arriving without that ability to study independently because they've been spoon-fed in school. So the two kind of go together, and I'm looking at supporting that by creating an online course. So if anybody has any interest in that, and if they'd like to feed information to me about what would be helpful in that course, I'd appreciate that. If they just contact me on via LinkedIn and send me a message, I'd really appreciate some feedback to know exactly what needs to go into that course. In the longer term, my big dream, it's a big one, is to have a massive training centre that I own and run that is good at everything and that encourages people to come in and want to learn and make them feel like they belong there, and that they have opportunity to learn in a very social atmosphere. I've got the whole thing planned out in my head. It's got a massive hall where we have motivational speakers and tea dancers and antiques fairs, as well as lots of training rooms, and a tea room and a vegetable garden where people can learn how to do gardening. Just like the hub of a community where people can come and learn and feel comfortable learning and know that learning is a lifelong thing that we should all be doing. Learning to me is a really important thing because it kind of opens up the world. I think, people who either feel unable to learn or who are not open to learning are missing out on so much. Mm-hmm. So I think that's my big view of the world, if you like, is the more people I can encourage to learn and grow as people, the happier I will be.
Mm-hmm. Where can people go to either connect or learn more about you and give you that feedback you were talking about?
Yeah, my website is just lizkeable.com. You can contact me through there. There's also blogs on there where I've written about my story and the way that I work as a success coach, so they'd be able to read things on there. They can contact me by connecting on LinkedIn and sending me messages there, if we want to talk more, then I can give them an email address and so on at that point.
Can you spell your name for people who are audio only?
Sure, yeah. It's Liz, and then Keable is Keable.
Nice. Excellent. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And for those watching, we thoroughly hope that you got some great value out of this. Now, if you have been searching for a place where other people are improving themselves and helping other people to do the same, I recommend you go and check out our community by clicking links either above or below the video. It's basically a mastermind where people come together and support each other every single day. So if that is what you have been searching for, go ahead and join us inside that community by clicking links either above or below the video. Now, we hope that you enjoyed watching this as much as we enjoyed creating it. Feel free to hit that share button so other people can get some great value as well. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. See you in the next one. We're done recording in 3 and 2 and 1.